Good evening.
Good evening, sir. We were planning to wait till 7:05
Ah,
and then start after that.
gynecologic. Why has Athira, Abhilash, and all have joined in this?
So we can go, sir.
I would really like to listen actually.
You want to listen?
Yes, yes,
I
sir.
don't know anything that happens, so at least somebody, if I ask me, at least I should be able to tell something. No?
Yeah, and anyway, I'm going to CGOPD. This will be good for me.
Okay.
Till I get
Ajay,
totally
let's
bored,
start,
I listen.
Ajay.
Okay, sir.
Sir, but I'm not going to listen to head and neck oncology this one, sir.
No problem, no problem. I am exercising.
Uh, we'll start, no?
I think we should start. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, good evening. So this talk is going to be a discussion on the role of lymphadenectomy in gynec cancers. So the focus of this talk is actually going to try and explore the need for lymphadenectomy and some of the controversies that exist around some of these malignancies, rather than the exact techniques and procedures. So these are the gynec cancers, and most of, or in fact, all of them have dealing with lymph nodes as a big part of their management. But in this short duration of time, covering all of them may not be possible. So I have chosen ovarian and endometrial cancers because these are the tumors that are most controversial and have conflicting evidence. So the talk on ovarian cancers is essentially, this is how it has been divided in literature, and this is how we are going to go over it as well. So there are several evidences related to early ovarian cancers as an entity, then advanced ovarian cancers, and in the setting of recurrent cancers. So all of this dealing with lymph node metastasis and how you go about thinking about them and how you manage them. So just an overview. So this is the FIGO staging for ovarian cancers, as you all know. So the first picture shows the initial FIGO staging of 1988, and then the 2014 one, which integrated many more components. And one of the most important things that was added in that was that retroperitoneal nodes, which was initially considered as 3C in the 1988 FIGO staging, was staged to 3A. That means to say that only positive retroperitoneal nodes were somehow prognostically better than having other peritoneal disease. And this is one thing that is important for our talk, which we will come to in the later slides as well. So 3A in the latest FIGO staging is retroperitoneal nodes alone. And this approximately around 10 to 15% of early ovarian cancers have this entity. So this was basically incorporated because of a trial that was published that showed that lymph node metastasis, isolated lymph node metastasis alone without any peritoneal disease should be categorized as a different stage. So what is the lymph node positivity in ovarian cancers? So essentially, as I said, you will have to divide them for the age of management and the way you think about them, to divide them into early ovarian cancers and advanced ovarian cancers. Early ovarian meaning stage 1 and stage 2 FIGO, and advanced is stage 3 and stage 4. So in early ovarian cancers, and here in bracket I have put as apparent, because when you say early ovarian, stage 1, stage 2, you essentially mean that they do not have lymph nodal metastasis. But still, apparently, when you think that they are early ovarian, still, when you go and do a systematic lymphadenectomy, you find that around 14 to 15% of them have an overall metastasis, lymph node metastasis rate. And around 7% have only a para-aortic lymph node positivity rate, around 4% both para-aortic and pelvic, and around 3% pelvic. But the story is different in advanced ovarian cancers. Around 40 to 60% of these essentially have lymph node metastasis, which is actually expected. So why is this important? This is important because when you think about early ovarian cancers, the facts that should come in mind regarding lymph node metastasis and the management is going to be drastically different as compared to what you would think in an advanced ovarian cancers. And we would come to that in the later stages. So having shown the previous slides, so the prognostic impact of nodal metastasis on survival has been clearly demonstrated in ovarian cancers. So patients that have positive ovarian, positive retroperitoneal nodes would be upstaged to 3A and beyond. And this has been incorporated in the latest FIGO staging as well. But what is essential to answer is that, having said that, lymph node metastasis is a prognostic factor. Does it add to any therapeutic value at all by trying to remove these nodes? So that is what we are going to answer, and that these are the trials that we're going to discuss. So these are the questions that we'll have to think about while going over the next few slides. Does therapeutic lymphadenectomy, that is to remove all these lymph nodes in the retroperitoneal and pelvic region in ovarian cancers, improve survival, or is it just a futile staging exercise? So, and then later on, we'll also discuss what exactly we mean by systematic template dissection in ovarian cancers. Is it only pelvic or para-aortic, or is it unilateral, bilateral? So this was a recent this is a review article published in 2020, in fact, by the same author that came out with a landmark trial in 2005 regarding ovarian malignancies and retroperitoneal lymph nodes. This beautifully demonstrates and summarizes all the data that is available till 2020 regarding lymph node metastasis in ovarian cancers, which we'll summarize. So in a simplified way, ovarian cancers are early ovarian cancers, which are FIGO stage 1 and stage 2, and advanced, which are FIGO stage 3 and 4. Early ovarian have a 25% risk of, are usually 25%, and advanced, so most of these patients are diagnosed in advanced stage, so that is around 75%. So all these trials that are pertinent to these are divided categorically between early and advanced stages. So one of the major question as to why we discuss whether we need to do a lymph node sampling or not is because many trials have shown that lymphadenectomy retroperitoneal pelvic is a major surgical procedure, and it not only adds to morbidity but also to mortality to some extent, increased operative time, post-operative stay, and costs. And also that radiological detection alone, for example CT scan, MRI, is still not as good as doing a thorough surgical staging. So having said that, so when you say that in an early ovarian cancer, where you assume that there are no lymph node metastasis and you do a thorough lymphadenectomy, you're going to upstage 20% of these patients. So it is definitely going to add some amount of prognostic information, and all these patients are going to go for adjuvant chemotherapy because of this. But whereas when you say advanced ovarian cancers, you already have categorized them into a stage where they will be getting adjuvant chemotherapy, and trying to do a systematic lymphadenectomy and trying to stage them, upstage them, is not going to add any benefit. Rather, only debulking as part of a complete cytoreduction is what would help. Just to summarize what I had said, so these were the trials that were published in early ovarian cancers. So one of the first trials was in 2006. That was by Magoni, which is a multicentric randomized trial in early ovarian cancers. What it essentially did was it randomized these patients, early ovarian tumors, into not having a lymph node dissection versus having a lymph node dissection. What they found was that the 5-year overall survival was not statistically significant. However, what exactly happened in the lymphadenectomy group was that their recurrence rate was lower. That was around 22% versus not having that, that was 30%. That was statistically significant. So no overall survival difference, but there was a difference in the recurrence rate. Another trial, this was retrospective, but having a large data set, again, saying that all these early ovarian cancers who underwent a para-aortic and a pelvic lymphadenectomy actually did not show much of an overall survival difference, but all of them had an improved 5-year disease-free survival. So probable explanation for this would definitely be that most of these patients who come with recurrence could be salvaged with chemotherapy. And that's why the difference in overall survivors was probably offset. This is another data, another retrospective study, a recent one, which again said that there was no survival difference in early ovarian tumors in the 5-year overall survival when all of these patients were subjected to chemotherapy after that based on their final surgical staging. So based on all these trials, the NCCN and the European Society of Gynecological Oncology have come up with guidelines. And what they say about early ovarian cancers is that a bilateral pelvic and a para-aortic dissection up to the level of the left renal vein is recommended and is a grade B recommendation in most early ovarian tumors, with the exception of the fact that in early stage 1, low grade or mucinous adenocarcinomas, you can avoid this. The reason being, high grade serous usually have a 15%, early ovarian tumors have 15% risk of lymph node metastasis. So by you subjecting all of them to a systematic lymphadenectomy, you're at least upstaging 15 to 20% of the patients, as opposed to low grade mucinous grade 1 tumors, where the risk of lymph node metastasis is around 2 to 3%. So they say that you could take that risk and not subject them to lymph node dissection. That is the guideline by the ESGO. NCCN again says that the para-aortic lymph node dissection should be performed by stripping all nodal tissue up to the vena cava and aorta bilaterally. So this, they have put a blanket statement saying that it should be done for early ovarian cancers. So in conclusion, for early ovarian cancers, retroperitoneal staging represents only a staging tool that is used to identify those 15 to 20% of patients that are affected by clinically apparent early ovarian cancers who would require adjuvant therapy. So essentially, this means high-grade histologies or grade 3 histologies. And you could safely try and omit a lymph node staging in mucinous or low-grade ovarian cancers. So what are the pros and cons of systematic lymphadenectomy is known to everyone. So doing a systematic lymphadenectomy adds to prognostic information. Therapeutic, not so much, because the overall survival does not increase. You could probably decrease the recurrence of these patients, but adding to all this, you're going to add morbidity to few patients and mortality to few. So that was about early ovarian tumors. Coming to advanced ovarian tumors. So these tumors essentially, as I had told in my initial slides, the thought process should be that the primary prognostic indicator in this is not going to be lymph node metastasis per se. It is going to be an optimal cytoreduction followed by chemotherapy. So whatever you can do to optimally cytoreduce these patients should be done. So if these patients have lymph node metastasis, you should have optimally cytoreduced. Now the question comes, after you have optimally cytoreduced these patients, that is, you have removed all the peritoneal disease and all the retroperitoneal nodes that were bulky, should you go ahead and do an additional exercise of removing all the normal looking nodes? So the following trials actually look at these. So initial data in 2000 that was published in 2010 actually explored 3 retrospective studies, which in fact suggested that doing this additional exercise of removing non-palpable lymph nodes would add to survival benefit. And that was a retrospective data, and that was not quite accepted by many. Then came the data in 2005. That was a randomized trial by Pacini, which was in fact a landmark trial in which the randomization was such that once these patients were optimally cytoreduced for stage 3 and stage 4, they were randomized into 2 groups, one that underwent a systematic lymphadenectomy versus ones that underwent only resection of bulky nodes. So what it actually found is again something similar to early ovarian tumors, to say that the overall survival did not change, but what exactly changed was the progression-free survival. And there was a reduced recurrent rate when you do a systematic lymphadenectomy. In contrast to that, the latest trial, which is the LION trial, lymphadenectomy in advanced ovarian neoplasms, which was published in NEJM, which had 600 and odd patients. In fact, the randomization was slightly different in that they did not select patients with bulky nodes. They were actually excluded. So, and patients without bulky nodes and stage 3 and stage 4 disease, who essentially had peritoneal disease, were randomized to having a complete systematic lymphadenectomy versus observation. And again, here, they did not have any difference in survival, nor was there any difference in recurrence rate. However, what it essentially pointed out was that the mortality and morbidity, even in experienced hands, was something that you have to consider in each patient before subjecting them to this procedure. So based on all these trials, so what the ESMO guidelines say is that, so the available evidence says that it should not be regarded as a standard procedure, systematic lymphadenectomy. However, you should definitely do debulking of these nodes whenever present. So that is to achieve a maximum cytoreduction. Again, NCCN again says that suspicious and enlarged nodes should be resected if possible, and resection of clinically negative nodes is not required. So the third scenario, the two scenarios that we discussed was early ovarian and then advanced. The third scenario is nodal recurrence. In fact, so these patients who have isolated nodal recurrences are usually quite rare, because when you have a recurrence, it's usually peritoneal disease accompanied by nodal recurrence. But there is definitely a subset where around 1 to 5% of these patients have isolated nodal recurrences. And some data suggest that the best possible way is to try and subject them to a secondary cytoreduction, though randomized level 1 data is still not available in these settings. Essentially, one second. Can you just give me a moment? Yeah. So what constitutes adequate complete lymphadenectomy in ovarian C? What we looked at is the need to do an ovarian lymphadenectomy in ovarian CA. And now we would try and address what actually constitutes lymphadenectomy, because retroperitoneal nodes could range from pelvic to para-aortic. So essentially the primary draining area of ovaries and fallopian tubes are going to be the retroperitoneum through the gonadal vessels, all the way up to the renal vein on both sides. So a systematic lymphadenectomy for ovarian or fallopian tube cancers should excise all these nodes up to the gonadal veins. So guidelines say that you have to do a systematic lymphadenectomy in these early ovarian tumors if you have to do up to the renal vein on the left, and at least up to the insertion of the gonadal vein on the right. So drainage also extends to the pelvic lymph node bases, which is why sometimes in early ovarian tumors, some centers follow both a retroperitoneal and a pelvic lymphadenectomy. So, but if you want to avoid a pelvic lymphadenectomy, you should at least do a retroperitoneal, that is a para-aortic lymph node dissection for staging purposes. But for advanced, this does not matter, because wherever there are bulky nodes, you will have to remove them. So this was the question that we put forward, and this was the brief answer to all of this. So role of therapeutic lymph node dissection, does it improve survival? In early ovarian cancers, definitely there is no overall survival benefit in all the trials that we have seen. However, there is a DFS benefit because there is a lower recurrence rate, which is in fact offset by the chemotherapy that you give them. In advanced ovarian cancers, it does not improve survival. It just increases complications by doing a systematic lymphadenectomy. So all that you have to do is a debulking surgery by these two trials, by Pacini and LION. So, and also, what is the extent of lymphadenectomy? In early ovarian cancers, you have to do a retroperitoneal staging. And if you want to go ahead with an additional step, you can do a pelvic lymph node staging as well. Some centers follow both, but at least retroperitoneal is what is recommended. That is. Yeah. So that was about ovarian cancers. Are there any clarifications for the initial before I go on to endometrial cancers?
Varun,
Yeah.
one question I have. In the early stage, you were telling that in low-grade tumors, you don't have to do extensive dissection and do the parietic node dissection and everything. But in early stage tumors, no, we don't do FNAC or anything. We just go in, take the tumor and come out. We will not know whether it is a low grade or a high grade. So in other words, it's like if any ovarian tumor is there, we don't know whether it is low grade or high grade. So the systemic pelvic lymph node dissection completely has to be done first stage.
Okay. This is
Whatever they are saying that
after you
low
subject
grade
them
you
to a
can.
frozen section, madam.
Okay.
So definitely you will have to do a surgical staging, which is standard. The question here is, should you include a retroperitoneal and a pelvic lymph node dissection as part of your staging in low-grade mucinous? And at least the one of these guidelines say that you need not, though the NCCN does not comment on that. So high-grade serous, definitely you will have to.
One thing is, yeah, Varun,
Yes, sir.
one problem that will come is, I don't think in a frozen section they'll be able to tell you about the,
Grade is it?
Grading and mucinous and all that. It will be very difficult. Shanti has not joined, no?
Correct, probably. But what I have seen in the literature is mucinous per se have been considered as low grade all through, and that is one thing they have mentioned, and that is why I have put a question mark on low grade serous. I'll just come back to that slide. So mucinous is definitely one of these guidelines mentioned that you can probably avoid doing a lymphadenectomy in these patients. So,
and one more thing, Varun, in advanced cases, no, most of them in stage 3 and stage 4 will go to neoadjuvant chemotherapy. Following neoadjuvant chemotherapy, is it worthwhile to remove the nodes which were bulky previously?
No, not really.
Before the chemotherapy was given.
No, I did not include a slide, but that was specifically mentioned in one of the papers that I had gone through. All the trials that I have mentioned were not for NACT. They were for upfront surgery again. So in a NACT setting where there were bulky nodes previously and now there is no bulky node, you need not do a systematic lymphadenectomy. For example, if there were retroperitoneal nodes and now there is complete response, you need not go ahead and do a retroperitoneal lymph node dissection in these patients. What you have to do is to remove bulky nodes more than 1 centimeter, more than 2 centimeters, with the theoretical intent that probably nodal disease has less blood circulation and further chemotherapy would be a problem in these patients, and just adding on to complete cytoreduction. So if there's complete response in these patients, it is recommended that we don't do anything in these patients. Is there an alternate opinion on that?
No. I think currently that is accepted as a standard, because I think most of the guidelines also are telling the same thing. So correct. I think a systematic lymph node dissection is only for early, and for advanced cases we need not do systematic. It's only bulky nodes. Accepted. I think
as part of cytoreduction. Yes.
Ajay, any opinion on cases? Any opinion on cases which are incompletely addressed outside and came for a follow-up for us?
Early ovarian tumors?
Imagine a gynecologist has done just BSO and hysterectomy, and that came out as malignancy. In such cases,
opinions are varied depending on institutions. At our institution where I trained, we used to actually go ahead and do another, because what we used to do is we used to give them chemotherapy if they were eligible for chemotherapy, rather than delaying them and putting them through another surgery. But then if they were really early stage and they were not candidates for chemotherapy as well, so they would undergo a complete staging again. like for example, outside they have done just a hysterectomy and they have removed the ovaries and it has come as high grade, and there is some feedback suggests that they would get chemotherapy definitely. So we would go and give them chemotherapy and then look for the response after that, and then this thing. Know if they were really early stage and then they were not adequately staged, we would try and go on this thing. That is institution based. There's no guideline on that. This is what I'm saying from what was being followed in the institution that I trained. Any thoughts on that,
Okay.
sir? Madam, any thoughts?
No,
on that?
same.
Yeah.
No, carry on. Endometrial.
Okay. So endometrial cancers, again, just like ovarian cancers, whether the procedure adds to diagnosis or staging is not in doubt. It definitely adds to prognosis and prognostic information, and it increases the stage of these tumors. Again, the question being raised everywhere is whether or not it may be of therapeutic value. So let's address that. Again, this is the FIGO staging for endometrial cancers, and one of the major shifts is that again 3C has been given a separate category. So prior to 1998, there was no concept of doing a systematic lymphadenectomy in endometrial cancers. In fact, that was surgical staging was not even included in the FIGO classification. So after 1998, with the results of the GOG-33 trial, so what they said was pelvic lymph nodes and retroperitoneal lymph nodes, para-aortic, definitely add to prognosis, and they should be surgically sampled or staged, and then that should be separately categorized in the latest FIGO staging. So that's 3C. And again, there is 3C1 and 2, essentially meaning that there is a difference between having only pelvic lymph nodes versus having para-aortic lymph nodes for endometrial cancers. Again, one of the more confusing things about endometrial cancers is not only just stage, but also several trials have risk stratified endometrial cancers. This is just the picture that I've put up is just one of them. There are many different categorizations, many different criteria taken by trials, but most of them, the underpinning concept is that not only stage, but the histology grade, the myometrial invasion, and the LVSI status plays a role in risk stratification. And risk stratification essentially translates into what adjuvant you would want to give, or whether you would want to give adjuvant or not. So lymph node positivity rate in endometrial cancer, the overall lymph node positivity rate is around 15 to 20%. And this increases with increasing tumor grade and the depth of invasion. And that is known by several trials. And this is one of the trials which was published way early in 1987 that showed that increasing tumor grade and increasing myometrial depth increase the lymph node positivity rate. However, so as I told you, before 1980s, there was no systematic lymph node sampling in endometrial cancers. And with the publication of GOG-33 and the inclusion of surgical staging, which also included lymphadenectomy in the FIGO staging, so we have been doing a systematic lymphadenectomy. But what actually changed was the publication of 2 landmark trials. So in 2008 and 2009, with the publication of 2 randomized trials that demonstrated that systematic lymph node dissection did not add to a survival advantage. So that is when the controversy arose. So before that, whatever data, retrospective data was there, most of them said that apart from staging information, there was also a therapeutic advantage to doing a lymph node dissection in endometrial cancers. So that was prior to 2008. And all this was retrospective data. So 2008 and 2009, 2 randomized trials, and these are the trials. So the first one was by Panisi, where 500 odd patients were again randomized into systematic RP node dissection versus not doing anything. And in fact, what he said that was there was no overall survival difference in these patients. So that was an Italian trial. And then there was a British MRC Aztec trial again, which again, early stage endometrial cancers randomized into receiving a lymph node dissection versus not doing anything in these patients. There was no overall survival difference or a recurrence-free survival. So in fact, there was no difference even in stratified subgroups in these patients. So conflicting data from retrospective studies and prospective studies, and the latest one, 2008 and 2009, have in fact just fueled and added to the confusion as to what to do in this. Again, a large retrospective trial. This is a Japanese trial. Though retrospective, the number of patients were quite high, and what they said was overall survival again was improved in their subset of patients when they did a systematic lymphadenectomy. So one of the criticisms of these two trials published in 2008 and 2009, even though they were randomized, were that there was no control. There's no control for the quality of surgery. So the number of lymph node ranged from 5 to 15 and probably 50 in some cases. But in fact, this retrospective data from the Japanese all had a clear set number of nodes that had to be removed and a proper staging that had to be done. So there are many different views. So there are proponents and opponents to these, and the debate still goes on. So what exactly do the guidelines say is what we'll be speaking about now. So essentially, I have summarized the trials, the PESIN, Aztec, the randomized prospective trials said that routinely lymph node dissection should not be done because basically it adds no survival advantage to these patients. However, the retrospective data, the previous ones and also the latest Japanese trials show that there is a therapeutic advantage and it improves survival. So what should you do? So essentially, the practice now is basically dependent on the institute, and there are many different ways to do it. Essentially, it all boils down to 4 different thought processes. One is not to do any lymph node dissection. The ones who believe in the prospective trials that were published in 2008 and 2009, versus people who still do a routine lymph node dissection in all these patients, both pelvic and retroperitoneal lymph node dissection. Probably many institutions today are going on to a middle ground approach where they try to risk stratify these patients and try and do a lymph node dissection in patients where the risk is beyond a threshold. And the other middle ground approach is probably to do a sentinel node sentinel node technique in these patients. So we'll go through all these techniques and what are the pros and cons of each of these. So again, so based on these 4 approaches that I have mentioned here, so based on what your institution follows, even the adjuvant therapy and the threshold for giving adjuvant therapy sometimes changes. Because for example, institutes that say that they do not want to do any lymph node dissection in endometrial cancers usually tend to give more adjuvant RT. And that has been shown by many of these cross-sectional studies that were done. Versus institutes that do a perfectly well retroperitoneal, para-aortic and pelvic lymph node dissections, even though high intermediate risk is the categorization, after that they still try and avoid adjuvant therapy. So there are different varied modes. The guidelines are not very stringent on these. What they say is you can follow any of this, you won't be wrong. There is evidence for all of this. So there's no consensus on this. So let's go over all of this in brief. So doing a complete pelvic lymphadenectomy, we all know it adds to morbidity, but it gives the most information, and you definitely upstage a set number of patients and they all go for adjuvant therapy if they come positive. But what about selective lymph node dissection? So one of the down points of complete lymphadenectomy was the morbidity. So having said that, could we do a selective lymphadenectomy? So the question remains as to how you would select. So there was a large trial published by the Mayo Group, which had around 350 patients, in which they used a set criteria that grade 3 endometrioid carcinomas with more than 50% myometrial invasion or greater than 2 centimeters tumors. So all these were categorized as high risk according to the Mayo group, and that is probably still being followed by many other centers today. So what is essentially said that the lymph node metastasis in this high risk group is probably higher as compared to not having any of these risk factors at all. So it recommended that they would do a lymph node dissection in these specific set of patients where the myometrial invasion is more than 50%, more than 2 centimeter primary tumor size, and the grade is a little higher. So this is the Mayo study. So what it found is anything that fell out of this criteria of high risk criteria essentially had a less than 5% chance of nodal metastasis, in which you could take the risk of not doing a lymphadenectomy in these patients. So the other strategy, which is recently gaining a lot of traction, is sentinel lymph node evaluation. So essentially, this is again a middle ground approach where you would use sentinel node techniques. There are different techniques of injection, but that is not the point of the talk. But anyway, cervical is the most routinely followed. There is uterine subserosal injection, and there is endometrial via hysteroscopic approach. All of these, you either do a colored dye or an ICG insertion. You look for the dye and the sentinel node, and then you biopsy the sentinel node, and then in effect you're trying to mitigate the complications of a complete lymphadenectomy versus the risks of not doing anything at all. Are there trials? Yes, endometrium has a good amount of retrospective data supporting sentinel lymph node biopsies. And even NCCN has come up with an article and an algorithm as to how to do the sentinel biopsies in endometrial cancers. Essentially, the key point to note here is that as of now, it has said that ideally both hemipelvises should be mapped after you do a sentinel lymph node after you do a dye injection. And if any hemipelvis does not light up, it means that it is an inadequate uptake of this dye, and you will have to do a complete lymph node dissection in that area. For example, you do a cervical injection and then the right side lights up for ICG. So you can remove the ICG node on the right side, but the left side doesn't light up. You will have to do a complete pelvic lymph node dissection on the left side. The reason for this is probably because it is still an evolving technique in endometrial cancers, and the risk of false negative could be high. So this is from the NCCN paper, which says that, again, they recommended for early low-grade endometrial adenocarcinomas. And this is the So in conclusion, lymph node mapping can play a more important role in lymph node assessment for endometrial cancers, and its role is evolving, and there is with increased surgical experience, so this could be the future of lymph node mapping in endometrial cancers. However, many centers still follow the comprehensive lymphadenectomy, or most of these centers follow the Mayo protocol for selective lymph node dissection. All of these are right. There's nothing to find fault, but then most importantly, you will have to discuss with the patient, because if there's a patient who does not want to be subjected to the morbidity of lymph node dissection, and he's okay with taking an extra adjuvant therapy, then you should offer him that. So that is all in the book. Yeah. Thank you.
Varun, are there any papers on high-grade endometrial cancers going for sentinel node?
There are what they have. It is not got into the guidelines yet. There are papers, sir. I have not included them in this. There are papers for high grade as well, saying that it is feasible, but however, all of them have ended with a note saying that further data is essential for to prove their safety and efficacy.
Because we are getting some like grade 2 and sometimes grade 3 early.
Grade 2 is okay. So most of these centers are following.
Even in high grade lesions, no sir, if the depth of invasion is less than 50%, then they say that lymph node dissection is not required. So para-aortic node dissection at least is not required.
That is
So
para-aortic,
again,
yeah.
if the depth of
No,
infiltration is
no.
more,
So your
then
question was
definitely it is
pertinent to
required.
sentinel lymph node biopsy, right?
Yeah.
Correct, sir. So many centers are following and they're publishing data to it, and then there's no, all of them have said it is feasible and their false negative rates are quite low, but still it has not found its way into the guidelines yet. I think maybe it will.
Maybe we should look at, giving and trying, look at our own data to see, how many of them light up and don't. Because something like a trial, whenever we are doing, like, EcoSOG or one of those trials they did, they gave and they looked at the mapping. Maybe something like that we should do. So that's something we should
Probably
focus on.
to test for false negative or false positive rates, something of
Yeah.
that sort.
Just to see our own this thing, maybe we should do in every case we should try and use it because we have the technology and it doesn't harm anybody.
Yes, sir.
So we should try it because many cases I think off late we have done endometrium and we just went ahead and did the comprehensive lymph node dissection. So something which we should consider.
There was a video online regarding this from our hospital.
Our video is there, yeah, correct. I think anything else to be discussed, any data, what is the current, this thing guideline, about this, mixed Mullerian tumors and all these kind of more aggressive tumors about the lymph node, extent of lymph node dissection. What is the current guideline?
I didn't quite go into the details of this, but definitely one paper mentioned that there's no sufficient data to give a guideline on that. However, all these sarcomas tend to be hematogenous, so there's no point in actually doing
Thank you, Madhyanjan.
for staging.
I think too many mics are on.
I'll just.
Yeah, Varun. So no, as of now, no evidence available.
No evidence because they are rare tumors, but it was an author's note saying that logic says that usually they are all hematogenous, so you should not do.
Correct.
So that mentioned. So as a staging procedure, so definitely as a therapeutic option, definitely yes. If they are enlarged, you will remove. This was for uterine sarcomas and endometrial stromal tumors.
Yeah.
Sir, one more thing, sir. When Anupama, Dr. Anupama is there from Amrita. So she does a lot of study on carcinoma endometrium, sir. There they give sentinel lymph node, they do sentinel lymph nodes and they just remove that node and send it for histopathology. Even if it comes positive also, they are not doing in systemic lymph node dissection. It is just to say that we are doing the node, it is coming positive and give them adjuvant chemotherapy. So for them all CA endometrium cases, they are not doing any node dissection. So only sentinel node, if that comes positive, she's for adjuvant, for radiation or chemotherapy.
Okay, that's their institutional protocol. Okay.
Yeah.
Because when there is no, institutional protocol, you should develop your protocol as to how to. So if this is the protocol, we follow that. That's all. We write the protocol and say this is what we are going to do. After that,
right
we don't have, because
there are no randomized trials on that, but her whatever papers she has presented, her disease-free survival and overall survival have not changed much. I mean, they have remained the same, even if you do a complete systemic this one also.
Okay. Right. I think we have covered everything. I think anything else to be discussed here?
I would like to add something to this. Hello. Yeah. So PORTEC 1 and PORTEC 2, these are the trials that is available for us radiation oncologists to decide whether to go for adjuvant radiation, addition of EBRT, addressing the pelvic nodes or not. So in that they say, like the PORTEC 1, which is for the which includes both the high risk as well as the intermediate high risk patients, and POTEC 2, which includes only the intermediate high risk patients. They have done the dissection of only the suspicious lymph nodes as per them. Probably it is the sentinel lymph node biopsy or whatever. So, and in spite of that, I mean, adding only the vaginal brachytherapy in intermediate risk patients does not reduce the overall survival or the locoregional recurrence. So I guess, I mean, these are large studies in which only the dissection of suspicious lymph node is being done. So.
Okay.
Grade 1 and grade 2 or grade 3 also?
Sir, intermediate high risk would be more than 50% and grade 1 or 2, or less than 50% grade 3. That is in the POTEC 2. And yeah,
Based
and
on
the
risk
POTEC
criteria
1
only.
what's that, sir?
No. It's risk criteria based this thing because
Yes,
that
it
part.
is risk criteria based, and in spite of having high risk patients, intermediate high risk and high risk, they have only addressed the suspicious lymph nodes. Probably it is, I don't know,
This
sentinel.
was in POTEC 3 you're saying, ma'am?
POTEC 2 and POTEC 1 is what I'm saying.
Okay.
POTEC 3 is all high risk patients only. So, yeah.
Okay.
Probably the Amrita people are following the same thing, I think. I mean, they don't remove the nodes. They just do the whatever is a positive node they're removing, and they're subjecting them to radiotherapy and chemotherapy. So,
ma'am, the thing is that in spite of the lymph node not being removed in intermediate high risk patients, we avoiding the EBRT, external beam radiotherapy, to the pelvic volume is not reducing the survival or the locoregional recurrence. So, I mean, that is the point here.
So they did not get a proper staging, nor did they get any adjuvant.
Adjuvant EBRT, no. VBT, yes. Vaginal brachytherapy, yes. EBRT, no. I mean, there was both the arms were there. They were comparing both the arms.
Did they give systemic therapy for high risk then?
What is that, sir?
Systemic therapy.
No, that was in POTEC 3, sir. POTEC 1.
That was in POTEC 3. Systemic therapy was added. This we are talking about the intermediate high risk patients.
Okay.
Okay, we'll have to
intermediate risk, you mean?
Yeah.
The
grade 3 less than 50% myometrium.
When was POTEC 1 published, ma'am? How?
When was POTEC 1
I mean, was it a very old trial? Because that was when probably there was no concept of
I think the 15-year-old update came recently.
So because lymphadenectomy as a concept per se in endometrial was only after the GOG trial added it to the FIGO staging. So if POTEC 1 was before that?
POTEC 1 was 2011 was when the 15-year-old results were published.
So definitely it was older than that. So it is only in
older.
Yeah, so it was only in 1988 that they added this. So probably that was not part of their systematic staging at all.
POTEC 2 was 2018, the one that I was talking.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, how you concluded was right. I mean, we need more data on this. I mean, it's still not time to conclude probably.
Yeah, because for now, most institutes are actually following a risk-based strategy where they would do a pelvic lymph node dissection at least, and then use the risk stratification for at least the retroperitoneal or para-aortic lymph node dissection.
Ajay, I have one question. If you do a sentinel lymph node biopsy, should we wait for histopathology report and then if it is positive, should we proceed with further dissection, or is it only for staging purpose?
I do not know actually, because I was trying to find the exact guidelines. Most, like Adam said, there were some papers which were all retrospective, which did not do anything, but all of these were for early stage. Okay.
Yeah.
So once they would all subject them to frozen section. Definitely they would suspect them to frozen section. In fact, there is a way in which you have to do a 2 millimeter cut and then only define them.
See, that's what, Srikanth, again, it comes to the same point, whether lymphadenectomy is therapeutic or only as a prognostic indicator we are using it, right? So again, the
Yes,
Aztec
ma'am.
trial is telling it is only prognostic, only for staging purposes, whereas the Japan trial is telling that
No, prognostic or
no
diagnostic?
survival also.
No, prognostic and diagnostic both. I mean, you mean to say once
Diagnosis is
you
therapeutic.
diagnose
I'm
it, then
talking
you
about
upstage it.
therapeutic.
So that means
It's therapeutic prognosis. That is the thing. No, Japanese trial is telling that it is therapeutic. But whereas the
No,
Aztec
madam.
trial, Japanese trial, whatever
Yes.
you have shown, that is telling that it is
Well,
therapeutic. Overall survival
correct.
and disease-free survival is increasing. But
because when I
Aztec trial and other trial are not showing that. Right?
when I presented the same topic in IASO, their madam from this thing from Aster, she told that sentinel lymph node biopsy is only diagnostic purpose, only for staging purpose. So whether it is positive or negative, you are not proceeding with further lymph nodal dissection in early endometrial. What they are doing is they are just doing sentinel node biopsy and proceeding with hysterectomy. That's it. They are not sending it for frozen section. They are directly sending for main histopathology only.
Okay, I don't think there's anything wrong at it. I think even that is published and there's no this thing. The only reason why this confusion is because the prospective data by Aztec and the Pessini also, the main critics of that is even though it has randomized prospective trial, the design of the trial and the surgical control was not up to the mark. So as long as there is robust data and there is something to refute that, the debate is still on whether definitely prognostic correct, but will it add value by doing an additional thing, therapeutic or no? Definitely no one knows. The prospective trials say it does not add value, but however, large retrospective data says that it adds value. So many centers they are divided among that.
Okay.
But definitely if the intent of our institute or any institute is only to actually prognosticate, just doing a sentinel lymph node biopsy actually would make sense.
Okay.
With the thing is, with the paucity of data, I think, in a way, we should be more cautious because we are as such directly responsible for most of these patients whom we handle.
Correct.
And recurrences are put on our head rather than anything. So we should be more cautious and go ahead with the full lymph node dissection. That's what we are following from before. If there is a strong data that comes up, or we are able to give volume sufficient to give a data, then it makes sense for us to restrict our self to whatever we believe. So as of now, I think it's a good idea to go ahead with the full lymph node, formal pelvic lymph node dissection.
Stratified
Or yeah, no, which one?
Right now what we are doing is a formal pelvic and a stratified approach to a retroperitoneal for a paravertic dissection.
Yeah, that's what we are following. We are doing for G1 low risk category, we are doing sentinel node also. Maybe we should include G2 also, because till now we are not done, because again the issue of accuracy of grading again was the concern. But from whatever evidence you are telling today, I think it is okay to do for G2 also, provided anyway we are going to give a adjuvant therapy for these patients. So I think that is something which we can consider from the coming times. We are not, see, for grade 1 only we were doing sentinel node, low risk grade 1. That's how we are managing.
The numbers are
Maybe
quite
low
low.
risk grade. Huh?
The patients for that, the patient population for that would have been quite low. Most of the patients that we get are high grade, I think.
No, see, the thing is, the pre-operative diagnosis is most of the time not accurate. You see, most of the times, they on biopsy it will come as grade 2, and in the final histology it will come as grade 1.
Correct.
So this issue will come up, and probably most of the grade 2 we could say it is grade 1 and do this and take a small risk of reducing the morbidity. On the other side, of course, grade 3 we'll go ahead and treat as we are treating right now. stratified lymph node dissection as you are putting it across. So I think that's what we'll continue. So I think nothing else is there. Shall we close this? It's 8.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sir, one more thing.
Yeah.
So
Bharat.
those patients with radiological node negative and in whom we are doing a complete dissection, I think we should probably start doing sentinel node as well. So we have to send sentinel node separately and the rest of the lymph node dissection separately, so that we have more data and something might emerge out of it.
But that's what I was discussing, Bharat. Yeah, I told that.
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah.
And even
we should start doing that.
The paper that has come out with regards to sentinel lymph node biopsy, in fact, says that in fact you should start off with whatever was being done in your institute, and then add sentinel lymph node and look at how your results are in terms of false negative rates, or in fact, are you actually detecting them or no? Because a lot depends on the technique of how you're doing it.
Absolutely. Yeah. Okay, that's it. So thank you.
Thank you, sir.